Hi there. Welcome to the From Lab to Launch podcast by Qualio, where we share inspiring stories from the people on the front lines of life sciences. Tune in and leave inspired to bring your life-saving products to the world.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. If this is your first time being here, welcome. We share inspiring stories of people on the front lines of life sciences bringing life-saving products to market. And if that sounds like you or you want to share your story, we'd love to hear from you. There's a form in the show notes here to apply to be on the show. If you have an idea or know somebody, please submit their name. We'd love to get in touch. Today's guest is John Kapitan, the CEO of Kapstone Medical, which is a medical device consulting company. They're a full-service company for pre- and post-market medical device companies in the U.S. and Europe. We wanted to bring John on the show today, not only because of his experience and expertise in medical devices, but also because he's a business owner, a serial entrepreneur, and inventor, and he's got a lot of great advice about how to run a company, how to think of marketing and sales and quality functions like the offense and defense sides of the same team. In today's show, he talks about the proper mindset for medical device founders, like behaving like a medical device company long before you're actually approved. And as a founder, how to not sacrifice your best idea for your first idea, which is a really interesting concept, and he talks about that a little bit. One of the things that I personally loved that he shared is how to have a work-life rhythm, not balance, and lessons he's learned from running a family farm on the side. He jokes that he has a 21st century job living in an 18th century farm. But lots of great advice, well-rounded person. Loved having John on the show and hope you get some valuable insights from it as well. Let's bring him in. John, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Really excited to have you on the show.
I'm looking forward to being here and to our conversation. Absolutely.
John's had a pretty interesting background in launching products as an inventor, business owner, entrepreneur, a lot of other things. But John, just for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your career, how you landed on starting Kapstone Medical, and some of your experiences leading up to that.
Absolutely. So by background, I'm a trained engineer, design engineer. I've got my mechanical engineering degree from Cornell University and really wanted to get into the biomedical or biomechanics field from day one. And I had a chance to work with the Cleveland Clinic, which is from Cleveland, Ohio, so it was coming back home after I graduated. And got into an area that I thought was really fascinating. That was biomedical engineering from the standpoint of creating products in partnership with surgeon inventors or physician inventors. Not all of them are surgeons. And that really piqued my interest in this whole area of product development for medical devices. So the subset of the life sciences that I've lived for the past 25 to 30 years has been in medical devices. And that day-to-day trying to solve a clinical problem was really what drove me. And so I worked at first with mostly pediatric cardiologists and in trying to put our arms around what the clinical problems they were seeing were, what some potential solutions were, and then trying to develop those solutions into a device that we could either take to market or spin out or license out to a larger company, an OEM. And like I said, that really drove my passion for this area and my interest in seeing those products come. So fast forward, I've worked with both large companies and small companies. Mainly like to stay in the small company area just because I think it's so dynamic, it's challenging, it's fast-paced, and it's a broad spectrum, meaning that there's no chance if you're in a small enough company to get pigeonholed into just one area, and that's all you do. So the companies I've worked in, I've worn many different hats and done many different things, and to me, that's just what drove me. The reason I started Kapstone 15 years ago is because I was seeing in the models that we were using for outsourcing and insourcing relative to product development, again, for medical devices. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is I was on the company side. I was director of product development, director of regulatory and quality, all at the same time. As I said, when you're in a small company, you wear many hats. I'm not sure I would recommend that, but nevertheless, we were 3 or 4 people and we had to all do different things. So what I was trying to do is make my life easy by developing some technologies in-house and then also outsourcing to various companies to just help us go faster, put more products into the hands of our sales reps, satisfy the many surgeons we were bringing on board and their desire to see improved products. And yet we had a limited internal staff. So I started outsourcing. And the challenge I found There were a couple, but the main one was that I thought I was making my life easier by outsourcing, but I was actually making it harder. And the reason I was making it harder is because I found a product development engineering firm, and that's great, a design firm, and they were awesome, but that's all they did, and they looked at the world through the lens of engineering. I then found a regulatory professional, and that person was good, but they looked at the world through only their lens. And same with quality and so on, as you can imagine. So what I ended up doing was playing traffic cop, right? The regulatory person didn't necessarily talk to the quality person who didn't have a relationship with the engineering team or the manufacturer. And so there were finger pointing, there was a lot of miscommunication, and I was having to try to put the pieces together myself. And so I thought, why not develop a company, start a new company that did all of those things under one roof so that we can have a single source solution, have a single point of contact for our customers who, again, I was on that side of the equation. I was on the company side hiring consultants. Now I'm a consultant getting hired by companies. But my approach was to develop a single source solution to alleviate the headaches that I was finding when I was on the company side, again, trying to hire people like myself. And that's what we did 15 years ago and have grown the company now to where we literally can take a product cradle to grave or concept to commercialization, depending on how you look at it, with all of those resident areas that are necessary under one roof, or at least under our umbrella organization, so that our customers have a single point of contact for all of their needs. And that has really blossomed from 2007 when I founded the company to today.
Yeah, that sounds like an answer to many medical device founders' prayers to have it all wrapped into one. When you vertically provided a solution, vertically integrated from developing and concept testing, product development, all the way through post-launch into regulatory affairs and maintaining quality management long-term. I think one thing you said, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say what a lot of people don't understand, and this is maybe one nugget, is that if you're a founder or you're an inventor and want to get a company off the ground, often they don't think about the requirements and the cost or the time or personnel, for that matter, of being a medical device company. So all of the effort is on developing the product, and that's great. I totally believe in that. But in addition to that, you are a medical device company before your product gets to market. Because if you're not setting up your quality system, if you're not operating the company in a way that you're going to operate once you get your regulatory clearance or approval, whatever the classification may be, then it's going to be a rude awakening come the day that you want to start distributing your product and you find out you're missing A, B, and C in terms of your organization. So it's something that we do where I guess you can say we're an incubator, but we're an incubator taken to the next level. And we're very much focused on the end game or the exit or the commercialization event, not just on the early stage concept generation, which we also do. But there's a lot of elements to consider in that process going from concept to being in the market that many people just don't know about or put off till a later date. And then, again, they get that rude awakening later on.
Yeah. The broader perspective there is so valuable. We've talked to many people who have said similar things where they say, in an effort to get the product developed as quickly as possible, because that's what capital or VCs or people who have invested in the company want to see. They want to see the product. And so they'll focus on that, hoping to get it to market quickly. But when they sacrifice quality, it ends up taking a lot longer because they have to double back and redo things that they thought they had already, workflows and things like that they thought have already been done. And another thing that I think you'd have an interesting perspective on is maybe that tension that as an entrepreneur you face where, let's say that getting funding is one of the biggest business challenges that medical device founders that we've talked to face. How do I get money to get this off the ground and hire my team and do all the product development that can be very costly? And so you have that additional pressure with product development and adding quality to it. How have your companies that you've, and your clients are in your own background that you've worked with, how have you found that they've been able to balance that tension between those, which unfortunately I think can be seen as competing parts, right? Product development and quality. Do you see it as, is there a world in which quality can actually enhance product development or make it accelerate versus I think the accepted ideology today is that there tends to be dissonance and tension between the two. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree that quality, taken broadly, broad sense of the term, can be accretive to your value. In other words, it doesn't have to just be, a lot of people look at this like they would look at a sports team. Are you on offense or are you on defense? And they look at sales and marketing and product development as offense. This is how we're actively creating value. Unfortunately, they look at quality as a necessary evil. It's our defense against the FDA coming in and shutting us down, or it's our cost of just being in this market and let's just do the minimum acceptable. And what I think they fail to realize when they have that kind of viewpoint, that quality is just a cost center, it's just a necessary evil, or it's just trying to keep us out of trouble, is they fail to see the positive ways that looking at product development with a quality lens, and I'm not talking about letting quality drive the process, I'm talking about using quality to supplement or to come alongside and help create value with product development. And doing good design control. Good design control, for example, just to take one example, you can use many in the realm of quality systems. Good design control does not have to be cumbersome. It does not have to be expensive and doesn't have to delay projects. In fact, written the right way, in a pragmatic way, I would say, that is a good fit for the company culture and size and what they're trying to do, I believe increases value in a very proactive or offensive way, to use the sports analogy, in one way by mitigating risks that we would be paying for or that company would be paying for if they didn't do that. So often, you mentioned the example of somebody's under the gun because they have investors and we want to see a product out as quickly as possible. In doing that and taking that and casting off good design practice or best practices in quite frankly, any other area of the business, may and usually does result in longer timelines, delays, and upset investors because of the mistakes that were made or the pitfalls that are fallen into or just the things that are overlooked. And so just a company that doesn't view quality as an offensive opportunity, I think there's also in the product development route, and I talk about this all the time because I see it so much, is we always tell people don't sacrifice your best idea for your first idea. And what I mean by that is often people are quick to jump over the definition of the problem and jump right into whatever the first solution is they could think of. They get investors around that idea, and then they try to move as quickly as possible to market that particular product or that particular design. And what I see happening is often that's maybe not the best solution to the original problem. If they would have spent more time framing the problem, asking the right questions, and planning their efforts instead of just jumping into what we all love to do, which is prototype and test and break stuff and hold it in your hand and show it around. But the more they do in addressing those initial questions, formulating good questions, talking with people in the industry, potential customers, focus groups, that kind of thing, the more time they spent in the ideation phase, generally the more valuable the concept is that's coming out, or one or two, maybe multiple concepts coming out of that initial, call it phase 0 or phase 1 of your process, into the real meat of it, which is the product development cycle. And I think savvy investors will appreciate the work done before the whatever widget that they're taking a look at as far as potential investment goes, because they realize that the company understands that this is a problem to be solved, and there may be different ways to solve it, and we've evaluated the alternatives, and now this is the one we've selected for this and this reason. So don't sacrifice your best idea just for the first idea. And you can use that analogy for business planning, you can use it for product development and other things, but I think there's a few mistakes that people tend to make that I have seen over and over in my career. And again, the one you brought up in terms of not giving quality the weight that it's due or the credit that it's due, quite frankly, in the development process and others. So those are just a few examples.
Yeah, I think that I love that analogy, the sports analogy of defense and offense. We were talking to a VC, a partner at a large VC firm at Menlo Park Ventures, and he was saying that when he's looking at an investment, he'll press on their quality practices to see what their attitude is about quality, not necessarily if they have a quality management system in place or what they're using or whatever it may be, but just their attitude about it. And that can make him more interested or less interested in participating in an investment round. And like you said, be very conscious of quality at the early stages, at least have it part of your initial plan, because that can actually turn on a lot of savvy investors.
It can turn on or turn off, depending on where you are in that spectrum. And I will tell you that I've seen real life examples of, at the end of not getting funding, but at the end when a product and a company is looking to be sold, and they're in due diligence. This actually happened. The company I was working with, they were in due diligence with a potential acquirer. And of course, part of due diligence on this company's part, this acquirer's part was to look at the product and the company from multiple angles, obviously sales and marketing and that sort of thing. But also they had their quality people do a deep dive into not just the documentation on the product itself that they were looking to acquire, but also the quality system of the company, because it gave such a good perspective of where along the spectrum does this company live relative to its views on quality. And that was going to have a very real impact on the valuation of the product at the end of the day. So part of the deal was the valuation was increased because it was a very solid, very robust quality system with a solid quality documentation package to go along with it. And what it did for the company was to mitigate risk and allow a more seamless transition into them owning the product. And that means they own the design history file and all of the quality problems and along the way that kind of went with it. They own that. And they knew that the better it was set up in terms of development with the quality system, the fewer headaches they were going to have down the road in integrating it into their own system. And then, of course, into defending it as time went on as their own product. Because they buy the product, that means they also buy the quality of the quality system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story. Maybe we jump into some of your experience working with other companies. What are some, you've worked with a lot of companies at Kapstone. And so we'd love to hear just maybe some of the most memorable moments of clients overcoming challenges, helping them launch and scale. Some of those success stories like this one you said where they had a very robust quality management system in place, and that added significantly to the valuation of the acquisition. So I guess maybe some of like the greatest hits of Kapstone clients or something like that.
That would be tough, but we do have the advantage of working with literally hundreds of different clients because we don't have our own products in the market, so we're agnostic from that standpoint, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so we get to work with companies large and small, all the way up from the biggest players in medtech to companies that have one person, one idea, pre-funding, pre-commercialization. And it's just fascinating, again, to just keeping on this theme of quality and product development or your views on quality. It's really fascinating because just as many examples as we have that I mentioned where value was increased because of the proactive approach to quality, unfortunately, we also have the opposite. We have some examples where our clients, despite our best efforts to guide them otherwise, just didn't want to pay for quality. And didn't want to, I'm not talking about quality of the design itself, but really more of the ancillary activities that kind of wrap around the development of the product, like a robust risk analysis, for example. And they just wanted to be, quite frankly, let's see how, quickly and cheaply we can get this done. And I have seen in one particular case, upon a potential acquisition, the value significantly decreased because of that. We have the example of the value increase and really the goodwill accordingly, because a company that's got a solid quality system is seen as knowing what they're doing and appreciating what needs to be done to be a medical device company, both legally and ethically, quite frankly. But we have also other examples where it just doesn't pay to skip important aspects of the quality system, and their valuation was knocked down. I think if you look from the standpoint of, you asked about highlights, there are many. One of the things we really like, our mission statement that I developed 15 years ago, and is as true today as it was then, is to inspire, guide, and equip our customers to realize their dreams. So these are not our dreams that we're trying to realize. These are their dreams. And if we can inspire them to envision a new reality with their product or their service or their company in existence, then we've done our job. If we can guide them along the way, avoid those pitfalls and foresee the risks and mitigate those risks, then we've done our job. And of course, if we can equip them with the tools and the resources they need, that's why I developed it, as a single source solution. And I think some of our most memorable highlights has been working with individual physicians to take an idea that they have had, and usually it's one idea in their lifetime or maybe two, but they're not like companies that are pumping out 3 or 4, products per year. This is a different aspect of our customer base that's really fun to work with. These are individuals who are passionate about what they're doing. They're physicians or individuals with just a passion for what they do and for how to improve it. And we've had a couple of examples of physician inventors come to us and say, look, I admittedly know nothing about how to develop a product. I've got this great idea. I've got some limited funding. Can we work together to see this thing to fruition? And quite frankly, most of them were not as driven by the potential financial gain as they were by seeing their product come to life in their hands or somebody else's hands to benefit their patients. And I truly mean that. I know it's easy to say and nice to hear, but it's true that we have the benefit of working, again, with lots of different individuals and different companies, different sizes. And the highlights for me are those that do it for different reasons. And we have several examples of taking literally, it could be a napkin sketch, could be maybe more refined patent publication or something like that, developing those products on, I would say, a fairly limited budget, being pragmatic, and then getting those sold to companies that were able to distribute those products. So we've got examples of products for hand surgery. I had an example with a podiatrist, a similar thing. So these are niche type products that might fit really nicely into the hands of a larger company, but they were the one idea that this inventor had that they wanted to see, and we were able to help them get it to fruition. And that's really rewarding.
Yeah, I would imagine. It's almost, yourself as an entrepreneur, an inventor, vicariously being able to go through the ups and downs of that again with somebody and work closely with them. That sounds very fulfilling. And I love the concept you have there. I know a lot of people who listen to this show are the innovators, pioneers, doing a lot of groundbreaking things, but they also are driven by some kind of passion, some mission, some higher good that they're working towards. The altruistic entrepreneur, maybe, if you wanted to give it some kind of definition. And those are some of the funnest people to be around for sure. That kind of leads me to the next question, John, which is, as in the medical device industry over the last 15 years that you've been helping a lot of clients, you've seen a lot of evolution, both in terms of new regulations, I'd say the oncoming of software as a medical device as a kind of a new and interesting category. But we're still at the beginning, I feel like, of this category of life sciences evolving and bio being more part of a daily life thing for a typical consumer. And I just am curious to know what your thoughts would be in terms of how the industry, how you see it evolving, or other things you would hope about in terms of over the next decade or so. How do you see things changing?
Good question. I see a couple of things, and this is going to it's a broad question, so maybe a little bit of a broad answer. But as far as our world goes, and again, we live in the medical device world of the life sciences industry, so it's by definition somewhat narrow. But I see a couple of things. Number one is I see more devices being developed for patients at home or in ambulatory surgical centers or in other settings, not just the hospital or the operating room. And along with that, I see a big focus on human factors, industrial design, designing for the end user. Some of the things early in my career, unfortunately, I have to admit, we didn't think much about. It was all about the technology and how it functioned, not as much about how it would be perceived or used, or what was the feedback on and how it felt, or was it easy to learn to just pick up and be intuitive in terms of how to use. Some of those factors are weaving their way into what we do every day, and have, quite frankly, for several years now, where we're talking about human factors much more often. And I think that's partly driven by this expansion of where and when medical devices are used. Like I said, many are used at home now. I think it also includes the merger of embedded electronics and software, apps on your phone that interface with devices, and just giving it a much broader user experience and more sophisticated user experience. So that's something else I see. I think the other trend is, or one of the other trends, because there are many, would be the personalization, where we're talking about patient matching. And again, this is not new, that we've been talking about it for several years, but it's really starting to come into its own, where we're talking about, look, you are an individual patient with individual anatomy and individual needs, and we're not going to just try to, fit in small, medium, or large into you as a device, let's say an implantable device in this case. We're going to custom tailor our device to fit you. And so the whole concept of patient-matched implants or patient-specific technology, I think, is getting better and better with the, I would say, large-scale adoption of additive manufacturing or 3D printing, certainly helping. Other factors are helping as well. I think the other thing to consider is that over time, and again, I have the benefit of now almost 3 decades of doing this, you have different regulatory climates. And what I mean by that is, if you're just looking at the United States, for example, FDA will from time to time they'll focus on different things. Maybe it's cleanliness and biocompatibility, And in the future or in the past, it was more on, I don't know, testing or design controls or something like that. Again, not that anything is not important. And of course, they're going to look at everything relative to your regulatory submission package. But there seems to be these kind of hot button topics from time to time, mainly driven by product failure, product recall, where we're trying to improve the system as an industry. The other thing, of course, is you have the U.S. versus rest of world. And right now, it's, as people would probably nod their heads and agree, it's very difficult or can be very difficult and lengthy and time-consuming and expensive to get approvals in Europe right now under CE mark because of the move from MDD to MDR, but also because notified bodies are fewer and farther between. The queue times are long, and a lot of people that would have gone to CE mark route first and FDA second years ago are going FDA first and CE mark second. So coming to the U.S. first, countries outside of the U.S. are coming to the U.S. first, getting approval here, using those funds to fund their commercialization efforts outside the U.S. So there's different trends in the regulatory landscape, but I think from a technology landscape, it's really the patient match technology is really exciting, and then the kind of taking the devices to the next level with the embedded electronics and software and that kind of thing is also fun to see.
Yeah. That was a fantastic response, and more devices being developed at home with 3D printing. I hadn't really connected the trend of 3D printing to people creating their own like hyper personalized devices just in their own basements. That's something I hadn't really thought about before.
Yeah, right now, what I was referring to is really more as an industry where we're personalizing for patients. What you just described is probably not that far off. Patient prints their, and I'll say it's interesting because this is true for lots of other areas of your life. And forget about life sciences for a second. If you look at the Internet of Things, right, connecting your appliances to the Internet or being able to have a 3D printer in your house, at some point you'll be able to design and print your own replacement parts for whatever it is, your car, your coffee maker, or your bike.
Yeah. There was somebody that was on the show, almost a year ago now, I guess. He had created these little silicone chips like his credit card and his pass on different fingers, and he would use his hand as his wallet. And a medical device biohacking at the same time is really interesting. I'm not saying that's where we're going to move as a general population, but that it's not too far off, I guess you could say. One of the things that I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, John, is, and we'll link to your bio and a couple of things in the show notes, but one of the things I thought was really interesting is that you also run a family farm and have been doing that for a while now. And when you look into it, the mission behind your family farm, I think, is really inspiring. But I think that you're very similar to people that listen to this show, where you have a business, you're a business owner, you're growing that and focusing there, but you also have life where you have other personal aspirations or things. And it seems like your family farm is a place where you can reset, refocus, and kind of take that white space, as Mr. Rogers would call it, a white space of time where you can be silent and think about how you're helping improve the world, how you're helping other companies launch and scale and get these life-saving products to market. I know you've talked about this in the past, but just would love to get a couple snippet here as we wrap up the episode on just how you've maintained a work-life balance as an entrepreneur and business owner, as well as these other things you have, like this family farm, how that all plays into it, and what lessons you've learned from.
Yeah. And when we talk about this, and I've done podcasts just on this subject before, because I think it's so fascinating. I think it resonates with people, quite frankly. That to me, it's really hard to talk about work-life balance, and it almost doesn't exist. And what I mean by that is, when we're balanced, we're not moving, right? If we're moving forward, we're always in a state of imbalance, and before we recover. Think about walking. You walk, you're standing still, and then to walk, you're putting yourself in a position of a controlled fall until the leg, hits the ground and you're able to restabilize, and then you just repeat that process over and over again. In a similar way in life, I think it's really challenging to just try to be in balance, because things are always happening. Things are always changing at work, at home, both. And I think the better term to use would be a work-life rhythm. And so we try to develop this rhythm where we're not just doing one thing all day, every day, and defining ourselves by it, because I think any of us burn out by doing that. And I know lots and lots of people who would raise their hands and say, yeah, that's me. I define myself by what I do. I do it, 100 hours a week, and then I'm just burned out. And so we offer on the farm a bit of a retreat from life, if you will, at least from the day-to-day hectic 100-mile-an-hour life that many people live, especially in this industry, to be honest with you. And we like to say it's more of a farmstead than a farm. We're not really a commercial operation. What we are is a retreat for people who may need to come and unplug and just talk life, talk faith, talk business, talk all three. And we like to smash it all together. And sometimes that makes people feel uncomfortable at first. And certainly we're not trying to force anything on anyone. But I'll be honest with you, when they come, they just feel like this sense of, okay, I'm going to breathe. And I just want somebody to listen to me. And so it's just fascinating. We've got a large family and a bunch of animals, and we're constantly learning. And so sometimes lessons will spill over from the homesteading life to the business, to what we do running the business, and sometimes vice versa. Something I see or experience in the business world will certainly find its way into how we do things as a family and a family farm. And I think the benefit of that, we often joke that we have an 18th century lifestyle and a 21st century career, and we're doing it all at the same time. And that keeps things interesting. It also keeps things in perspective and allows us to, like I said, apply the lessons learned in one area to another. And I think one of those big lessons is just how to work with your hands. We're a society where we're so dependent upon typing on a computer or hitting buttons on our phone, and we're losing quickly that ability to and interest and knowledge about working with our hands. And so that's something we teach our kids, and we do personally all the time, my wife and I, is to, whether it's getting in the dirt and growing something or fixing something, creating a work of art, whatever it is, the working with your hands complements the working of your mind, and I think it makes the two better. And that's why I think the retreat aspect of what we do resonates with people, because it's much too one-sided for most people, I find. In terms of
that's not typically what we talk about on this episode, on this podcast, but that I think there's a lot of things we can take away from there, because we're all humans, John, right? We're all people involved in this industry to try to advance it in some way or another. But at the end of the day, we're not robots. We're people, and we have individual needs and things like that. So I just appreciate you sharing that. To wrap up the episode, we'll ask one last question to you, then let you go about your day or go back to the farm, whatever is next for you. But if you could leave a voicemail to everyone in the industry, and you knew that they would all hear it, what would you say? What would be a piece of advice you'd leave in that voicemail for everyone?
Wow. So at Kapstone, we live in a world that's a little bit different, where, again, as I mentioned, our mission statement, we're trying to help others realize their dreams. And I would leave a voicemail around this fact that there is a way, if you've got ideas, to realize those ideas. People always talk about passion, right? You have to have passion for what you do. And I agree with that. But pure passion alone is not unbridled passion is not necessarily helpful. We hear things about you need to be patient and persistent. The other P I would add would be pragmatic. I really think that at the end of the day, there is a way for you to realize your ideas, or your vision, for example, but let's be realistic. And I think if we can understand that not everybody's maybe going to share your enthusiasm. Maybe at first there's more detractors than there are cheerleaders for your idea. I think as long as we recognize that there is a place, there's a way to do it, we're going to help you, again, just getting back to the mission statement, we're going to try to inspire, guide, and equip. And as long as there's an opportunity where we can be realistic about, hey, this may not rock the world. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But if we're realistic about our goals and about our risks and about just what this is going to take, whoever is listening to this, recognizing that there's going to be some ups and downs, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to continue to build value, not just save lives of patients or improve their quality of life, but really helping those that come up with these ideas realize their dreams. So that's going to be way too long of a voicemail, but somehow we can condense that. At the end of the day, think outside the box, and there's plenty of people that will be willing to help you.
Yeah. That's great. John, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of From Lab to Launch. We'd love to continue the conversation and continue to talk here and follow what you're doing at Kapstone. And we'll link to your company, your LinkedIn profile, and all that kind of stuff in the show notes. But if there is a place for people to get in touch with you, if they wanted to reach out, how can they touch?
Absolutely. So the best way to reach us is take a look at the website first, kapstonemedical.com, KAPSTONE medical.com. Or my email address could be in the show notes, jkapitan@kapstonemedical.com, or call us at 704-843-7852, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Awesome. All right. And we'll link all of that in the show notes. Thank you, John. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be in touch.
I really appreciate being here. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of From Lab to Launch, brought to you by Qualio. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe and give the show a positive review. It really helps us out. For more information about Qualio, our guest today, or to be a guest on a future episode, please refer to the show notes. Until next time.